hand. She had tulsi in her mouth and in her head, and she had water from Ganges and Radhakunda in her mouth and on her head. A gentle, contented look adorned her face, and her tongue vibrated the holy name. What is chanted loudly. Jai, Srila Prabhupada has delivered his devotee. This is available to us all. We just have to take the mercy as Ratnaranjani did. Ratnaranjani ki jai. A little reading from the devotion. So this is further aspects in transcendental service, and this is called serving the Lord according to one's position. In the Padma Purana, there is a statement that one should perform the ceremonies for the Lord according to one's financial position. Everyone should observe different ceremonies and celebrations of the Lord by all means. Jai, Nectar Ocean ki jai. I think that's quite obvious, that statement. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 10, entitled Prahlad, the best among exalted devotees, starting from text 67 through to the end of the chapter. So we'll just do the first three verses myself. Sharam Danushi Sandhya Muhurte Bijitishvara Tadaha Tena Durbedya Harota Tripuro Nripa. My dear King Yudhishthira, the most powerful Lord Shiva joined the arrows to his bow, and at noon he set fire to all three residences of the demons and thus destroyed them. Devi Dundu Bayonidur Vimana Shata Sankula Devarshi Pitri Sidesha Jayeti Kushumot Karai Havakiran Jagu Rishta Nanritush Chapsarogana. Seated in their airplanes in the sky, the inhabitants of the higher planetary systems beat many kettle drums. The demigods, saints, Pitas, Siddhas, and various great personalities showered flowers on the head of Lord Shiva, wishing him all victory, and the Apsaras began to chant and dance with great pleasure. Divam Dagdva Purastisho Bhagavan Purahan Ripa Brahmadibis Shtuya Mana Swamdama Pratya Padyata. O King Yudhishthira, thus Lord Shiva is known as Tripurari, the annihilator of the three dwellings of the demons, because he burnt those dwellings to ashes. Being worshipped by the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva returned to his own abode. Okay, we can do this verse together. Evam Vidani Asya Hare Swamayaya. Evam Vidanya Sahare Swamayaya. You got it there? Okay. We'll try it again. Evam Vidanyasya Hare Swamayaya. Vidambamanasya Nrilokam Atmana. Vidambamanasya Nrilokam Atmana. Viryani Gitani Rishibir Jagadgurur Viryani Gitanya Gitani Rishibir Jagadgurur Lokam Punanani Param Vadami Kim Lokam Punananya Param Vadami Kim Evam vidanyasya Hare Swamayaya Vidambamanashan Vilokamatmana Viryani Gitani Rishibir Jagadgurur Lokam Punananya Param Vadamikim Evam Vidanyasya Hare Swamayaya Vidambamanasha Nrilokamatmana Viryani Gitani Rishibir Jagadgurur Lokam Punananya Param Vadamikim. Please chant. Ladies? No? Okay. 1 second. Evam Vidani. In this way, Asya of Krishna, Hare of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swamayaya, by his transcendental potencies, Vidambamanasya, acting like an ordinary human being, Nrilokam, within human society, Atmana, of him, Viryani, transcendental activities, Gitani, narrations, Rishibi, by great saintly persons, Jagadguru, of the Supreme Master, Lokam, all the planetary systems, Punanani, purifying, Aparam, what else? Vadamikim, can I say? Translation. The Lord Sri Krishna appeared as a human being, yet he performed many uncommon and wonderful pastimes by his own potency. How can I say more about his activities than what has already been said by great saintly persons? Everyone can be purified by his activities simply by hearing about them from the right source. Please repeat. The Lord Sri Krishna appeared as a human being, yet he performed many uncommon and wonderful pastimes by his own potency. How can I say more about his activities than what has already been said by great saintly persons? Everyone can be purified by his activities simply by hearing about them from the right source. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Bhagavad Gita and all the Vedic literatures fully explain that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, appears in human society as an ordinary human being, but acts very uncommonly for the well-being of the entire world. One should not be influenced by the illusory energy and think Lord Krishna to be an ordinary human being. Those who really seek the absolute truth come to the understanding that Krishna is everything. Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. Such great souls are very rare. Nonetheless, if one studies the entire Bhagavad Gita as it is, it's a good point, Krishna is very easy to understand. The Krishna conscious movement is just trying to make Krishna known all over the world as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is too Bhagavan Swayam. If people take this movement seriously, their lives as human beings will be successful. Thus ended Bhagavatam purports, 7th canto, 10th chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prahlad, the best among the exalted devotees. Om Agyantamanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshunmilitam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vikam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagayate Gram Yat Kripatam Vande Shri Grim Dinataranam Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthapatale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurvana Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. So this is a very interesting pastime that just took place. And it's not the first time that actually Lord Krishna came to the rescue of Lord Shiva. Although Lord Shiva is known as Mahadev, the greatest amongst the demigods, because generally the demigods are Jivatma. And so Jivatma means like an ordinary spirit soul. Although the soul is not ordinary, the soul is amazing according to the description of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Bhagavad Gita. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe the soul as amazing, and others, even after hearing about it, cannot understand. So this means those who are, even after they hear about the soul as being amazing, they still can't understand. It means that they're engrossed in the bodily concept of life. And sometimes that goes for us as well. Therefore, we have to regularly hear of the activities of the Lord and hear the words of the Lord and the philosophy which the Lord has given us. And Prabhupada, I was just reading recently, Prabhupada was saying that just to understand this one so simple thing, that we're not this body, it takes a lot of purification. We can theoretically understand it, but to live in that constant realization, knowing that I'm nothing to do with this body, I'm nothing to do with this world, then that's quite a big realization. So there's different energies of the Lord. There's the Tatastha Shakti, which is, let's start from the Bahiranga Shakti, means the potency of the material energy, the external energy. There's the Antaranga Shakti, which means the internal potency, which means the spiritual potency, and then there's Tatastha Shakti, which is what we are. And it's also split into two different categories, the Paraprakriti and the Aparaprakriti. So the spiritual and the material energy. So we are of the spiritual energy. Although we're marginal means that we are on the shore. We can be either influenced by the spiritual energy or by the material energy, as we choose. And the living entities who are entangled in the material world, they've chosen to be influenced by the material energy. But Lord Shiva, he's of a different Shakti. So although he's not the Jiva Shakti, or an infinitesimal living entity like ourselves, who's influenced by Maya, then still it's considered, it's been explained by Lord Brahma in the Brahma Samhita that just as yogurt is nothing other than a product of milk, it comes from the milk, but it's not the same as milk. If you go into the kitchen and you say, okay, make me some burfi out of that yogurt, you say, no, I need milk for that. But you can make burfi out of the milk and you can make yogurt out of the milk. So although Shiva has more potency than the regular Jiva, then he doesn't have the same opulences as Krishna. And we see that on a couple of occasions then even the pastimes of the Lord have shown this, that Lord Shiva is amazing personality. But there was one time when he was given this benediction. You may have heard this story before, some of you may not have. He was giving a benediction to a demon. Does anyone remember the demon's name, touching his head? Was it Vrikasura? So this Vrikasura was doing some great austerities. He started offering his own flesh into the sacrificial fire, and he was ready to offer his own head in. And he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, being compassionate, said, okay, I'll come and see you. What do you want before you cut your head off? Maybe you should let him just do it anyway. So he says, okay, obviously you want something from me. What can I do for you? He says, I want the benediction that whosever head I touch, it explodes into 1,000 pieces. And you can just imagine Lord Shiva shaking his head thinking, another numpty, you know. They perform austerities for who knows how 1,000 years just so that he can explode people's heads. Such a foolish thing to ask for. Because Lord Shiva is a great transcendentalist. He's also Vishnu and not Vishnu, just as much as yogurt and milk are one and same and different. So it's considered that he's the manifestation of Lord Vishnu who deals with the mode of ignorance, because Vishnu cannot be in touch with the mode of ignorance at any time. And he's very compassionate. He's known, there's a name called Nilakanta. That's one of his names, isn't it? Does anybody know why he's got that name? That's right. When there was a great churning of the ocean of milk, then many wonderful things came out of the ocean. Look, Airavata, Indra's elephant, Ujjaishrava, that horse, so many, Dhanvantari came out with the Ayurveda nectar and stuff like that came out. But also some poison came out. So just like, if you're making ghee, then you're left with the pure ghee, but you have to take the impurities out. So when the impurities come out, then nobody knew what to do, but Lord Shiva compassionately took it and held it in his throat. He swallowed it. So and his throat went blue, and therefore he was known as Nilakanta, and this was considered that he was being compassionate to all the living entities, because this poison would have created havoc. So he's very compassionate. So even though people are looking for foolish benedictions, then still he gives them, but it's more of a kind of business arrangement. Generally, the devotion that they offer or the austerities perform are not necessarily done out of bhakti. It's done out of some kind of material desire. So there's 18 Puranas, and 6 of them are in the mode of ignorance, which is where Lord Shiva is considered to be supreme. But Lord Shiva himself doesn't consider himself to be the supreme. So for those who are followers of Shiva, then they often think that Shiva is the supreme, he's Mahesh, etc. Now he is Mahesh relating to this material world, because he's known as chief of amongst the demigods, because generally the other demigods are Jiva, Tattva, whereas Lord Shiva is not in that category. But still, so he gave this benediction to this demon, and he wanted to try it out immediately, tried to try it out on Lord Shiva's head. So Shiva gave the benediction. He knew there was potency in it, so he made a run for it. And then, of course, this is a typical example of knowledge in the hands of fools is dangerous. Like this person performed austerities to get something which is simply a destructive thing. And we see that nowadays also in the world, that people are advancing in some knowledge, but what do they do with the knowledge? Prabhupada makes this point that material advancement of civilized, so-called advancement, has been measured by the advancement in technology, etc. But have they transcended the basic animal propensities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending? There's one interesting book called Intellectual Animalism. Anyone ever read that book? Yeah, it's very interesting. It's quite heavy, actually, for a small book. And it shows you some of the gory things which are going on in the material world in the name of advancement, of civilization. But Prabhupada says, in the past, people were defending with bows and arrows. Now they're defending with nuclear bombs, but still defending is there. So what is the advancement? So the advancement is to give up this defending propensity. Sometimes it's actually described as eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing. So this fearing and defending is the same thing. So either why are people defending? Because they're afraid. And Krishna gives us the cure for this, vitaraga bhaya krodha, to become free from attachment, raga, bhaya, fear, and krodha, anger. Then one becomes fully absorbed in him, man maya, mamupashrita. So because Krishna is ajita, he's unconquerable, and when we associate with Krishna, we become dear to Krishna through devotional service, then this is the best type of defense, that we actually just Mari Krishna Rakike, Raki Krishna Marike. If Krishna wants to save me, who can kill me? Krishna wants to kill me, who can save me? So Lord Shiva has been chased throughout the universe by this Vrikasura, and finally he arrived at Lord Vishnu and took shelter. And Lord Vishnu started laughing, and the demon says, why are you laughing? He said this. He started jokingly putting Lord Shiva down. He says, you don't think, this Lord Shiva can give you any benedictions. Look at who he associates with. He associates with all the ghosts, hobgoblins, and mode of ignorance. And look, he's supposed to be a great personality, but he's not even dressed properly. He just puts ashes on his body, and he's just making a mockery of Lord Shiva. He says he can't give you any benedictions. He can't even do this, can't do that. He says just touch your head and you'll see. And he touched his head, bang. So Lord Shiva outsmarted him. Lord Vishnu outsmarted him, just as he outsmarted Hiranyakashipu. So this is Lord Krishna's intelligence is just it's supreme. He cannot be frustrated at any point. God's will, Krishna's will, is never frustrated. Just like when Lord Chaitanya was on this planet 500 years ago, and the devotees were doing Harinam, and the Chand Kazi, who was a Muslim magistrate at the time, he tried to stop it. But this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not like the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes from the spiritual abode, and then some pipsqueak of a magistrate says stop it, and he says, oh, well, I better just go back then, the Chand Kazi's upset with me. It's like he was never going to be frustrated. So, of course, the pastime was that Lord Chaitanya organized a massive civil disobedience, Harinam, on the way to the Chand Kazi's abode. And on that march, then many of his guards either fled out of fear or they joined the Harinam. And finally, when they approached Chand Kazi's abode, then Chand Kazi was more in a submissive mood. And incidentally, Lord Nrsimhadev had appeared to him in a dream, so that helped change his mind as well. And therefore, as most of you know already, but some of you don't, that this thing here with the Vaishnav tilak in it, normally it would just be like a shield, and the devotees used to carry this on a stick, and this was the emblem of the Chand Kazi, which meant that they were authorized to have Harinam and no one should stop them, because at that time the Mughal magistrates and rulers were in India. So it was part of the Mughal Empire, I believe. Is that right, historically? Yes. And this is another occasion where Lord Shiva, he was up against a bit of a difficult situation because he was able to kill these demons, but because they were being given this nectar, they were being brought back to life again. And we learn that Krishna intervenes here. Let's see. So Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu, they became a calf and a cow, and at noon they entered the residences and drank all the nectar in the well. So it was interesting that even in those days the culture was that you don't stand in the way of the cow. But nowadays the cows and the calves are exploited so much, and this will bring a great misfortune to the living entities. Cows are supposed to be protected, and failure to do so actually reduces the duration of one's life. So simply to make the cow extinct by not drinking their milk is not the solution. You know, if everyone was to, of course, we don't support the violence which goes on in the various industries, but the positive alternative is cow protection, Goraksha, because this is a divine symbiotic relationship, and the devotees understand this. So even in those days, it seems like the cow and the calf were not given any obstruction to entering into the residences, and they would drink whatever nectar was there which the demons were storing. And because of this, Lord Shiva was then equipped with so many weapons by the Lord, and he was able to conquer over them. And so in this verse, what's extremely important here is this hearing about them from the right source. So simply hearing is one thing, but simply about hearing from them from the right source is important. And we see in Prabhupada's purport here, he's not glorifying himself or promoting himself, but he's promoting Krishna's words when he says, nonetheless, if one studies the entire Bhagavad Gita as it is, Krishna is very easy to understand. So because Prabhupada is directly coming in his succession from Krishna, he's authorized to speak about the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and there's no adulteration of his presentation. Therefore, one does not become confused, one becomes enlightened. And it's also recommended that we don't read, not because we're some kind of sectarian cult or something like that, but if you read too many versions of the same thing, you can become confused. Now, to accept Krishna's words from Bhagavad Gita as it is already, as his words are, is evam parampara praptam imam raja vidu sakalaneha mahata yoganasta parantapa. So Krishna says, this supreme science was thus received, was thus received by the saintly persons. It was received through disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. And then the science as it is appears to be broken, so therefore Krishna is here to re-establish it again. Yada yada hidharmasha. He millennium after millennium, he establishes Dharma. And of all dharmas, he says in the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, the highest dharma is Sarva Dharma. Of all dharmas which are to be followed, then the highest dharma is just to surrender to him directly. Everything else is a little bit beaten around the bush, but surrendering to Krishna and Krishna's instructions directly, as given by the bona fide representative, and Krishna is saying this. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sivya upadikshanti te gyanam gyaninas tadvadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Now, we can say, okay, so this guy says here that he's a guru, so he said he's a spiritual master, so we'll go to him. Like Swami Ripofananda Bhogi Yogi from Bombay, he's called himself a guru, so we just accept because he calls himself. Now, one cannot be self-appointed. You can't just... Prabhupada refers to this as upstart. He uses very interesting words at times. So just like if you want to learn something, some skill in the world, then you learn from someone who knows that skill. Otherwise, it's very dangerous. You can imagine, I seen one clip of somebody the other day. It was, electricity is a very dangerous thing. Anyone here ever had an electric shock? Okay, I'm glad you lived to tell the tale. But sometimes people get an electric shock and then that's it, they're finished. There was one famous Scottish football player, he was changing a light bulb in his house and he must have had it switched on. He touched one of the terminals, died straight away. It has that ability, it stops your heart, just like that. So it's a very dangerous thing to be dealing with. So if you were to understand the danger of that, then you would respect that power and you would try to study how to operate with that power safely. And you want to make sure that whoever's teaching you knows what they're talking about. If the person who's teaching you keeps on getting electric shocks, you think, nah, I don't think this is the right person. So similarly, if the person who's teaching you in devotional service is either free from or becoming free from, or is connected with that succession which is authorized, then we know we can be safe. We're following the right path. So the spiritual life is like a razor's edge. Now, a razor, it can cut things very nicely, or it can create such havoc. If you ever have to shave with a razor blade, you have to cut like this on the edge of the blade. But if you move it sideways, immediately there's a cut. So, but it can be used used to cut things nice and cleanly. So Krishna is directing us towards understanding him through his bona fide representative, and there's no other way to understand him. This is mentioned here. Simply by hearing about these activities of the Lord from the right source. And as I said, Prabhupada was not necessarily simply just promoting his own Bhagavad Gita as it is, but he's promoting the words of Krishna as it is, because he understands that there's so many versions of Bhagavad Gita, but there really is no version. There's only one version. It's just as Krishna spoke it. It's not like, oh, this is Bhagavad Gita as how I interpret it. Like the 5 Pandavas represent the 5 senses and various other things. No, the 5 Pandavas were 5 people. They were devotees of the Lord. They're not representing something. And when Krishna says, surrender to me, he means surrender to the unborn within you. It doesn't mean that. If he wanted to say that, he'd have said that. He says, surrender to me. He already establishes, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, I am the master of all spiritual material worlds, surrender to me. So he's established throughout Bhagavad Gita that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that we surrender to him, and that any debt we have to this material world is vanquished. I shall protect you from all sinful actions, do not fear. So this is such an amazing verse, that we are afraid. Fear is there because intrinsically the soul knows what is right and what is wrong. And when we transgress the laws of the material world, then immediately we know that there's a reaction due. Just like I was speaking with one devotee recently, and they did something which was they were expecting a reaction from straight away. And the thing is, as a devotee, we may or may not get a reaction as Krishna determines what is good for us. When we're under the protection of Krishna, then it looks like sometimes, just like we're speaking about Mother Ratnaranjini, she was suffering so much. For those of us who were there who've seen it, for 2 years we've seen her suffer tremendously. But we've seen her shine amazingly. She didn't want to take any painkillers. She didn't want to accept service from others, and she was apologizing and crying for having to take service from others when they should be serving Krishna. Such genuine humility was coming out. You can't fake that. Sometimes we're like, I've been humble for too long. It's somebody else's turn to be humble this time. It's not. You got to be humble forevermore. It's not just a part-time hobby. So fear is there because we expect some reaction. But when the cat has got the rat in its mouth, or the cat has a kitten in its mouth, it looks the same. Cat's gone down the road with something in its mouth. The rat and the kitten, they're experiencing completely opposite. The kitten is experiencing protection of its mother, but the rat is experiencing the joys of death. So this is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee, that we may appear to be suffering, we may appear to be this, or we may appear that, we may appear to be in difficulty, but when we stick with Krishna consciousness, then this difficulty is the hand of Krishna purifying us. Sometimes we don't see it, we don't appreciate it, but we look back and we think, yes, that was necessary for me to learn something. It was Kadamba Kanana Maharaj once was asked, have you ever seen God? And he says, I've seen the hand of God. And there was another devotee who was saying that if you've been through some difficulty and you came out learning some valuable lesson at the end, would you rather have not went through the difficulty and not got the lesson? And everyone that he asked said, no, I'd rather have got the lesson. Because if you haven't, you probably have to go through it again anyway. So, because these life lessons that Krishna is putting us through are there to wake us up that this material world is not where we belong. Even recently, one Christian was speaking to me and he was saying that Jesus Christ's mission was basically an invitation of God to call everybody back home. Now, they use that term as well, interestingly enough, which would open up a bigger discussion of, well, where did the soul come from then? It didn't just spring forth at birth. So going back home means must have came from somewhere. You don't go back home if you've never been there. The backbone of the Hare Krishna movement is called back to Godhead, back to home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada used to coin this phrase. So clearly, this is where we belong. And we don't belong in this material world. So time after time, the Lord personally descends to the material world or empowers his devotee to speak on his behalf and invite us to come back to the spiritual world. And Lord Chaitanya's mission is Jiv Jago Gaura Chandaboli, Kotanido Jao Maya Pisa Chirikoli. Wake up, sleeping souls, Lord Chaitanya's calling. Wake up. For so long you've been sleeping in the lap of the witch called Maya. So Maya, sometimes the witch can put someone under a spell. So Maya has under this spell of illusion, thinking that we're this body, we belong in this world, and we can enjoy here. And therefore we're always chasing our tails, or we're like the the donkey pursuing the carrot on the end of the stick, thinking just one more step and I'll get it. I nearly got it there. It's swinging towards me. Let me just time it right. Oh, nearly got it. We're thinking we're going to enjoy it. And then at the end of the day, maybe the owner of the donkey gives the donkey a little taste of the carrot, or gives it some hay. So this is the situation that we're in. We're thinking we're just going to enjoy, or we're thinking we are enjoying, but actually, how can we enjoy when we're faced with Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease? So this is the message in Bhagavad Gita. Also, Krishna says that the enlightened, they perceive the evils of birth, death, old age, and disease. And what is that evil? It's separating us from Krishna. It's separating from our eternal life, full of bliss and knowledge. That is a real evil. And that is a real suffering. So much material suffering is going on, but the real suffering is that everybody is bereft of that relationship with Krishna. So when we go out onto the streets and we chant the holy names, we're connecting people with Krishna, and we give people books, they get to learn about Krishna, and then they get to realize that I could be a devotee as well. We can be sure that when we're on the street doing books and doing Harinam, then people are thinking, I wonder if this could be for me. I just got a message from someone at Bhaktivedanta Manor that a devotee had met someone in Edinburgh just the other day, and the person was visiting Edinburgh, and they got a book, gave a donation, and they said it made their day. It was just so wonderful to meet a devotee in Edinburgh. So devotees shouldn't think that what they're doing is just like, oh, does it really make any difference? It really does. There's nothing out there. People have, at this time of year, between Christmas and New Year, then most people are on holiday. They've been sitting around the house for a couple of days, watching television till their eyes have gone square, and they just want out of the house. So you'll start to see people out on the street, and sometimes they've overdone it and they're looking for something. And even if they haven't, they're out there looking anyway. What they're out there looking, why are they there if they're not looking for something? If there's nothing there, but if they're hoping there's going to be something there, well, let's go window shopping. In other words, we're just kind of going around and just exposing our minds to everything which is there to see if there's something which we can connect with, which is going to satisfy us, but it's not there. You know, not from the pound shop to Harrods, you're not going to find it. They might find it in a charity shop if they've got like a Bhagavad Gita or SSR that's been put in there. Many times people have found Prabhupada's books in charity shops. So we can understand that what efforts we're making to represent Lord Chaitanya's mission here is directly under his care, and he's seeing this directly. And we're becoming dear to him by doing what is most dear to him, which is because he's Maha Vidanyaya Avatar, the most merciful incarnation, then simply he wants everybody to get the mercy. Everyone takes to this chanting. Everyone gets to learn about Krishna. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna, Shika. So just chant the holy name of the Lord. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, worship Krishna, and Koro Krishna, Shika. Sika or Shiksha. It's the same thing. It means to learn about Krishna from the authorized Vedic literatures, from the bona fide source. And because Lord Chaitanya's anxiety, although he's always experiencing great bliss, his anxiety is for the fallen souls who are unnecessarily suffering in the lap of Maya. So when we go out and we connect with people, then we're relieving Lord Chaitanya's anxiety. This is how we become dear to him. In order to do that, then we have to keep up our good practices of Krishna consciousness ourselves, so we don't forget why we're doing what we're doing. So I think we'll just stop here if anyone's got any comments or questions. HG Prabhupada.
I just wondered if could it be someone's swarup that they with Lord Shiva in his abode?
Not that I know of. I've never heard that. But unless anyone else can answer that.
I was just going to mention about the devotee day before yesterday, Veera, and he was telling me the two most spiritual experiences he's had in his life was he came to Jamasni last year, and in the Hindu temple the other day, he was Kirtan, he said just connected very deeply with the Holy Day and had an amazing effect upon it.
Yeah, that's it. If people can connect with the holy name, then their faith is already born. Like we used to go and do some school programs in a place in Glasgow called Bridgeton. I think it was called St. John's or John Street Bridgeton Academy or something. And we got a very keen insight into, so back in those days, which was in the 90s, then people weren't sure about the Hare Krishna movement. And we weren't necessarily promoted as being something good, because people's ignorance, they would just jump to conclusions and lump us in with cults and things. Things have changed since then. But when we went to some of these school programs, you could see that the kids were getting experience from chanting, they were loving it. And I was thinking that because they're making connection with the devotees in the holy name, then whatever negative stuff they hear about, they think, well, that's not how I know it. That's not what I experience. And people are looking for experience. They're not going to simply just accept dogma any longer. And this is where Krishna consciousness comes in, because there was a survey done. There was a chap called Rupert Sheldrake. I heard one of his talks, and he said that there was a survey done that many people are leaving traditional religions, but at the same time, many people are looking for spiritual experience. So they haven't given up on God, they haven't given up on spiritual life, but they just are not finding it in the way it's been presented. Where Krishna, and I actually was thinking, this is, I was quite happy in the sense that I thought this is an opportunity here for us to now see that this is what they're looking for, and we have that experience to give, prasadam, practical devotional service in the holy name. And actually learning about themselves and learning about God, which is beyond faith, but they actually have practical realization, direct perception of the self. So this is, I think it's a spiritual evolution of society. Sometimes doubts come in, and then when the doubts come in, that can impel one to knowledge and experience. So in the bigger picture, I think that things will move on to a more spiritual level amongst many people. Of course.
Some people may see Mother Ranjini's example as discouraging. So how would you deal with that? Because you could look at it and think, well, she was so pure already, and she had to go through so much before she went back so much into life.
Well, she had the choice. She could have taken the medicines. She had an operation, and she could have went for a second operation. She had chemotherapy. She could have went for chemotherapy again. Some people would choose to do that, but she chose not to. She chose to take shelter of Krishna. So the example is, follow the choices that she made, and you get to the same destination. It's a scientific process. It's not a case of, well, she was pure, so she was able to do that. How pure she was before, who can say, but because she made the right choices, certainly she went back to Godhead. And everyone will make their own choices when that time comes, but the examples of devotees who are here now, living with us, who do pass away before us, then we try to take the examples of them, so when our time comes, we make the right choices. Because ultimately, you make the wrong choices, then you're back again. And sometimes it appears that that when people are in those situations, it's like you can't really decide what you're going to make a choice on unless you're in that situation. But when you're aware of your mortality very acutely, then naturally a devotee makes these choices. But still the choice is there. She chose, and she had association which was encouraging her just to get absorbed in chanting. So it's important to keep herself in good association. But I guess it wouldn't be right to not mention about her dedication in devotional service. When I mentioned earlier on that she was never idle. So when she got sick, then it took 5 devotees to cover her service. Not necessarily because she was superhuman and she could extend time, she managed to squeeze in like 72 hours within 24 hours or something. No, because she used her time wisely. And Prabhupada often will say this, you'll hear it many times in conversations, lectures, not to waste time, because time is so valuable. The time comes to the end of our life, we think, oh, I've wasted so much time, I could have been cultivating Krishna consciousness, and now it's too late. We don't want to be on that platform of regret. So she was one devotee who never liked to remain idle. So she was our accountant. She was also a cook for the devotees. She looked after Tulsi Devi. And she would clean, at that time we just had Krunabhavan, so she would clean the temple and the Krunabhavan building, ashram. And she also grew flowers for the deities. Of course, all these things were not maybe in the scale that we have today, the deity worship, etc. But what it meant was that she was never unengaged in devotional service from the moment she got up to the moment she went to take rest, and she always got her rounds done. Sometimes you'd see her at the corridor at Krunabhavan walking up and down, and she had her bangles, you'd just hear her jingling around. And she was also a very chaste wife. She took her spiritual master very seriously. This was the main thing. She was very grateful and dedicated to her spiritual master's instruction. And although she tried Sankirtan and it was very difficult for her, but she felt like her point then was, because I'm not one of those devotees who's out on the street, then my best place is to serve them. So she utilized her time to serve the Sankirtan mission in a very dedicated way. She didn't think, okay, I've managed to get out of doing Sankirtan now, how can I get out of doing the pots? How can I get out of, hoovering the guest room or whatever else might be there, or, ploughing the field. She was thinking, okay, the devotees are going out there making such sacrifice. The least I can do is get Krishna's mercy by serving Krishna's devotees. And so she would just do that fully because the devotees were fully surrendered to doing that too. So when she got sick, then we always knew she was around because you'd hear her bangles, but you'd never see her and you never spoke to her except for if you went to get, because she did the petty cash, you go and get some money, and if you didn't get a receipt, then you get told, okay, you bring it the next time, or you don't get any money for your bus fare or your fuel. And she was a real mother of the Scottish Yatra. If you had a cut finger, you went to her for a plaster. She really did look after the devotees of the Yatra like that. But there was an age difference as well, so that was kind of, in those days, certainly it was quite natural. And she was also a great devotee of Srimati Vrinda Devi. To enter into Vrindavan, you have to get Vrinda Devi's mercy. And there was it Murli, who stayed at Vrindakund, Murli what? Murlidhar. So there's one devotee, I hope you don't mind me speaking on a bit longer. There's one devotee called Murlidhar who lived at Vrindakund. And I suppose it's not too important, but Vrindakund, there was a Babaji there called Madhav Baba, and he was always explaining to this devotee, Muladhar, that to enter into Vrindavan, then you have to get Vrindadevi's mercy. So he was talking about Vrindadevi's mercy, and finally he asked him, "So how do you get Vrindadevi's mercy?" He says, "Go preach Harinam in the West," because he was kind of thinking that this Baba's old. He's going to pass away, and perhaps, I'll stay here and I'll be the Baba of Vrindakund and I'll get Vrindadevi's mercy. But he says, no, go to the West and preach the holy name. So, Mother Anjini, she did get Vrindadevi's mercy. She was actually, I would say, the person who brought Vrindadevi to the West, because people weren't so conscious of Vrindakund in those days, but she would visit that place when she was there, and she had a small picture which you can, if you go into the Shalagram room, you'll see a little shrine to Mother Anjini, her Panchmala, her japa beads, a little picture of Vrindadevi she worshipped for years. And when she passed away, then in her name, then we gave money to build that temple which you see at Vrindakund that was built by the Scottish Yatra, and renovate that whole area in the name of Mother Anjini, and then when they got a new deity, because some bandits, some dacoits had stolen the deity, broken her, they got a new one made, didn't like, and because of our connection with Vrindakund, they said, "Oh, would you like a deity of Vrindadevi?" And Vrindadevi never left Vrindavan. When the Mughal invasion was going on, then many of the deities were taken out of Vrindavan, but although they tried to take Vrinda out of Vrindavan, she never left. And although these dacoits tried to take Vrinda and the deity, they were thinking she'd made of some precious materials, they would sell her, then they didn't actually. She was just found broken still within Vrindavan. But they offered us Vrinda to come to Scotland, and therefore the Vrindadevi deity arrived here around Nityananda Tirodishi. And since then, other people have taken Vrindadevi deities. So I think it's quite... To those who were there at the time, we could see this wasn't some sentimental thing, that she was really on a different platform. The atmosphere where she was around, it was just quite amazing. It wasn't there before, but when she got sick and then she started really taking shelter every step of the way, then it was just like she was just really blossoming like anything, even though she became paralyzed, etc. There was something I was just going to share. Yeah. A devotee called Tribhuvanath, who was very dear to Srila Prabhupada and who headed up the festival program here. He also was the one who was responsible for printing Bhagavad Gita in Arabic. And Prabhupada said, when Prabhupada seen this Bhagavad Gita in Arabic, he said, "Whoever printed this, I take the dust of their feet on my head." It was Tribhuvanath. Tribhuvanath went to the Middle East and risked his life. He was almost executed for preaching in these countries. There's stories about that for another day. But he was also there when Prabhupada passed away. And he came to see Mother Anjini because they were old friends from the Edinburgh Temple back in the early 70s. And he came out of the room. I was there and he says, "Wow." I says, "What wow?" He says, "I never experienced an atmosphere like that in that room except for one time, which was just before Prabhupada passed away." And, she actually just passed away a few days later. So it wasn't just a sentimental connection or attachment that led us to feel that she was a great devotee. She was a wonderful devotee. There's a book in there called Simple for the Simple. You can go into that room and read it sometime. And it's no exaggeration. And there's many other stories which are not in that book, which are quite intimate and very elevated spiritually. But she never stuck out when she was just doing a regular service. She never stuck out to anybody as being anything special. But certainly, she got the mercy of the Lord, and she made the right choices and took shelter in the Lord. And I think that is there to show that we can also go in that direction. Anything else, or shall I finish now? All right, Iskon Guruvanda ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Tagore Premanande.